What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and some more SPQR coverage here as we work our way through the series covering some starter warbands for each faction and kind of our thoughts behind what we chose and why we think that's just a great way to get started with these lists and kind of showing you how you can get the most out of starting. So we've kind of arbitrarily chosen 500 Denarii as a starting point for all these warbands, pretty good level, and lets you have some fast, fun games, especially again if this were geared towards campaign play as opposed to just one-off games. So today we're going to be looking at Caesar's Legions, one of the two Roman lists in the game here, and again, a pretty powerful list all around, especially with just how good the stock legionary is. So let's get started. All right, so our focus for the list is really just going to be taking advantage of the defensive qualities of the list. So again, by and large, you're always going to be outnumbered when you're playing Romans just because of how expensive all your individual models are, but they might not be the most killy individually here, but again, just stock profile includes a lot of great defensive war gear. So we're going to take advantage of as much of this as possible. So defense, defense, defense. So all of our legionaries come with chainmail and large shields. And our cavalry has chainmail and small shields, but 2 wounds apiece. So really, again, can go quite a ways there. So chainmail is going to give us a +3 to our armor save, so really 3 up armor saves to be successful. The large shields let us reroll, and the small shields let us reroll some attacks as well. But the large shields are definitely going to be the better ones, especially on, again, the legionaries. And then attrition as much as possible, right? We're going to be outnumbered. We want to choose our engagements carefully, and we might not just instantly destroy an enemy unit in 1 or 2 melee actions, but just they're going to grind themselves down versus that legionary unit as much as possible, barring crazy dice rolls. So we just want to make sure that we set those combats up in our favor, and the hero is going to be there to contribute some kills as well, and the cavalry is there to mainly distract, but again contribute a little bit here and there as well. But again, we're only running a smaller amount of those. All right, so let's take a look at the hero. So we'll try to keep things as cheap as possible because again, we want as many bodies in general, especially for the legionaries. So the hero is going to clock in at 68 denarii. 40 is his base cost. We do pay a premium for the large shield here because again, the heroes don't come with any gear in this list. So 8 denarii for that, but the one that kind of hurts the most is the chainmail shirt for him. Just trying to keep him the same as the regular legionaries. That's 16 denarii. We could have gone with the cuirass for 2 cheaper points, but it also hurts us in our mobility because it's -2 to your movement for the same defensive bonus. So, and if the hero is going to be in the legionary unit, we didn't want to slow them down even more. We wanted to keep them at least at 5. But that's a decision you could make if you wanted to swap out some points there. Then the sword for him. So we're just going to keep him nice and simple, and really he's essentially going to be just an extra legionary in this list, but provide that extra little bit of oomph depending on how we kit out his stats. So pretty simple here. So then to review hero, basically, so again, he's officially going to have a movement of 5, 6 base, -1 because of the chainmail. He's got range +1, but we don't really care about that as much because there's really no ranged in this list. Melee is +2, but again, here's depending on how, if you're playing this for a campaign, you do get to apply 2 stat buffs at the start here for starting hero. So really, choices are going to be yours. Typically here, given how defensive the Romans already are, I wouldn't bother adding a 3rd wound. You could if you want to, of course. We usually don't mess with agility. Bravery is fine for a starting game, but I would certainly bump his melee, I think, to +3. More hits should ultimately equal more kills, and also adding a 3rd melee die I think would be huge here. So those would be my 2, but we didn't want to mark it here just to, again, allow everybody to make their own choices there. So on to our actual minion units. Okay, so the legionary unit, we've managed to pack 12 legionaries here, and the reason we also added the cavalry is, we could have gone just 1 large unit here of legionaries, but then your list is literally one-dimensional, and really enemies who do bring multiple smaller units can really just try to whittle away at you as much as possible. It might not be effective, but they can kind of kite you around the battlefield because typically they're going to be faster than you. So, but having the cavalry at least lets us have a little bit of flexibility. But anyway, back to the legionaries here. So again, pretty awesome for just a basic unit. And this Caesar's Legion list really doesn't have much in the way of different unit types. You got the Legionaries, the Cavalry, and Scorpio teams. We're not going to waste our time with the Scorpio team. Just does not do enough for the points. So move is 5, range +1. Again, we don't care. Melee is +2 and 1 melee dice. Again, in the new edition here, everything got dropped to 1 melee die. Barring a few random things. Agility is 0. We don't care about agility for these guys. Bravery is +2. Again, pretty good standard. We don't have to have large units to get extra bravery because, hey, they're Romans. And again, that wonderful, wonderful armor of +3 for your basic guy. So basically, they're all tanks, right? And then the large shields will give us rerolls against basically everything coming in. 1 wound apiece, of course. Sword, again, it's not going to cause any penalties to the opponents, armor saves or anything like that. But again, they're just going to grind themselves down, trying to punch through our armor and the buffs that we get from the shields. We did add 1 horn. Again, I feel like every unit should have that. Don't leave home without it. Again, having that 1 extra action once per game at the right moment can be huge, whether that's for an extra move just to get into combat and ideally make it a decisive combat, or maybe have an extra round of fighting or whatever it might need to be just to outlast and outperform the enemy. So 12 of these guys plus the hero will go in here, so 13, and part of that is we want to just try and preserve our special rules as long as possible. So we'll turn to that next. All right, so speaking of special rules, so shield wall is by far the more important of the two here. So as long as we have 10 or more models in the unit and they're all in base contact with each other, enemy units get a -1 to their melee checks during melee actions. So that is huge. We want to keep that as long as possible because, again, it's already an uphill battle for them to cause damage to us with, again, chainmail and large shields. So giving them a -1 to their melee, and again, most melee-focused units in the game are going to have a melee of +2, just like us. So if we can just make that +1 for as long as possible, it's that much more of an uphill battle. So they really would be hitting on 5s and 6s versus 4s, which really, really does matter. So shield wall is awesome. Testudo is something we have access to, but I think by and large we really won't need it in small games. You're unlikely to see that much missile fire come in. But as long as we have 10 or more models in the unit and everyone has at least a base contact with 2 or more members of the unit, you can do a special action. So you do have to spend an action to do this, whereas shield wall can just be on as long as you meet the requirements. What it does is it cuts your movement down to 3, but the enemy is now also got a -1 to their range checks, which again, -1 to your range, you got really awesome armor, and then the large shields can help you out as well. But I feel like it's situational, and again, unlikely that you're going to be facing such a sheer volume of missile fire in small games that it's really going to make that much of a difference. I mean, theoretically, I guess an opponent could go all ranged, but again, very few like high quality ranged units, and if they're running javelins, they're going to be relatively close to you as well, so you should be able to then get them into combat. And units typically that carry javelins really won't do anything to you in combat, so you should be able to just essentially breeze through all of them. Now, again, it's just it's tough to say, but if somebody brought a whole army of javelins, again, it's a finite resource, so ideally they'll waste some time just on natural misses. Adding that extra -1 is situational, I guess. But it'd be more, I think, just something in general for larger games where it could matter. But being reduced to that movement 3, you're essentially at the mercy of the opposing units. Then you're just not going to catch anybody with that. But it's useful to have access to it, and the opponent might overestimate how useful that is if they really don't know the ups and downs of it. All right, guys, and then finally cavalry. So with the little points that we had left, we managed to squeeze in 4 more 4 cavalry here as a small unit. So and then added one of the upgraded one of the guys to have a horn as well, just because again that extra move action or the extra action once per game is huge. So these guys do have a move of 6, so they're going to get around the battlefield and ideally, if nothing else, distract the enemy. And ideally, they'll worry more about what this unit can do than the ever advancing legionaries. But we have range +1. Again, we don't bother with ranged in this list. Melee is still +2, which is good. Melee die 1 apiece, no agility, as of course because it's a horse. Bravery's +2, but here we get again another unit that has chainmail. It does have small shields and an extra wound because of the cavalry. So that unit should also be very tanky. So not the heaviest cavalry unit in the game, and certainly not the killiest, but it's kind of at a weird crossroads because it's still very heavily armored, but it's also a unit that does get hit and run, which is interesting, right? So chainmail shirt, horse, small shield. We get short spears, so when we get charges, it's gonna do a little bit of damage. Shield, and then again the horn for that extra action. So overall, pretty neat there. But again, a little bit pricey at 30 points a piece. And then they do have hit and run, so to summarize on it, if an enemy unit performs a melee action, now if you're already in melee, obviously you can't hit and run because you're already engaged. But if you're not engaged and the enemy tries to perform a melee action to get into close combat with you, you have to perform a bravery check. You should ideally make most of these. And on a successful bravery check, you gain a free move away from the enemy, and that really should get you out of range of being charged. So you can attempt it multiple times a turn, but once you've had a success, that is your one attempt or one full success for the turn as far as using that rule goes. So neat little ability to have that you can also try to bait the enemy with if you're feeling confident on it, just to get them out of position or again make them waste time on this unit while the legionaries do their thing. So that is the list in general. So again, want to make sure that we keep the legionaries protected as much as possible until they get into combat and do their thing. Cavalry should ideally screen a little bit, and they're still defensive enough to where they should, if need be, shield the legionaries a little bit. It's all about keeping the legionaries above 10 for shield wall, and then letting them just grind the opponent down. So, and having that second unit lets us at least have some flexibility for basic scenarios and things like that. You do want to probably be careful about enemy cavalry and how they're engaged because typically they're going to be better than you. Um, as far as the offense goes, might not be as defensive, but again, you do only have 4 of these guys, so there's only so much they can do. But that is the list in the nutshell. So basically, we have 13 plus 4 here, so 17 models in the unit or in the army, clocking in right at 496 out of our 500 denarii that we've allotted ourselves. And that's just as much as we can squeeze in. So hope you guys enjoyed. Leave us a comment. Let us know your thoughts on the list and if this is something you'd try out this way or if there's any changes you'd make. You could, I guess, go all cavalry too if you wanted. It'd be an interesting choice. But again, you can have even fewer models. So like and subscribe, guys. We'll have more SPQR for you very soon. Take care.